If Japan is on your bucket list for a family trip, this is the episode for you. We are talking all the details of how we booked our trip to Japan next fall for our family of 5, all using points. Listen in. Hi, I'm Raya.
And I'm Duane.
And we are your hosts of the Travel Party of 5 podcast, where we share how we travel as a family of 5 around the world.
We will also share how we use points and miles to travel as affordably as possible and sometimes even completely free.
So if you're wanting to travel more with your family, but you're not sure how, we'd love for you to listen in.
So welcome to our podcast, where we hope you learn a thing or two to get you closer to your next trip.
Hey guys, welcome back to Travel Party of 5 podcast.
Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in.
Today we're going to give you all the details about our trip to Japan that, spoiler alert, is not happening for like 11 months. But if I wait until we go on the trip to tell you how I booked it, I'm not going to remember. So today we're going to be giving you all the details and everything we learned doing the research and figuring out the airlines we were going to fly and all that fun stuff. And our trip to Japan is completely booked with one exception, and we'll get into what that is here in a little bit. So,
And again, when she says we, she means her.
Well, but then I do the research and then we talk about it. And then I'm like, well, what do you think about this and this and this, you know?
Yes, but I put my input in and she always goes the opposite direction.
That's also not true. So I would say the booking of this trip was probably like 4 to 6 months in the making before we even started booking anything. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And part of that is because I needed to understand, number one, what airlines I could use points for to get all 5 of us to Japan. And then I needed to make sure that we had the points to do that. So,
well, even backtracking, you had to figure out when was the best time to go as well.
Oh, for us, yeah.
Yes. Well, and seasons in Japan, you know?
That's true. Because we generally can travel. We have 3 time blocks throughout the year that we can travel because we have kids in regular school. So our kids get a spring break, which is 2 weeks. They obviously have summer, and then they get a fall break, which is 2 weeks. And our summer is short. Our summer is only about 8 weeks, and it ends mid-July. So our kids go back to school middle of July.
Which is very early.
It's incredibly early, but that's also the reason that they get 2 weeks for fall and spring break instead of 1.
Yep.
So those are kind of our windows that we have to choose from. And for us, it was either we knew we didn't want to go in the summer because summer in Japan is really hot.
Humid.
And so we knew it would either be spring or fall break. And spring is when the cherry blossoms happen, which is
a really, really busy time there.
Yeah, so it's a really popular time, and it would be really fun to go and see that, but it's also a really busy time. So you're going to pay peak rates for everything. And we didn't want to do that.
No.
So we opted for fall break. And so from there, like I was mentioning, I needed to figure out the airlines that we could take and how do we get the points to do that. So that involves applying for and opening certain credit cards and allowing time to meet the minimum spends and have the points deposited so that they're available to use when the flight availability actually opens. So I'm going to tell you all the options for airlines that I considered, and then we'll tell you the ones that we ended up picking. So fly to Japan from the West Coast, which we're in Phoenix. So again, that's West Coast, but we were pretty sure we were going to need to reposition because we talk about this all the time, but for being the 5th or 6th biggest city in America, Phoenix has terrible international flight options. So here were my kind of short list of airlines, and then we'll tell you the ones we picked. So ANA was the first one that I considered, which stands for, is it Air Nippon?
Nippon.
Nippon, sorry. And you were familiar with that from when you lived in Japan, right?
Yeah.
The other one, do you have something else to say?
Nope.
The other one is Virgin Atlantic, Alaska Airlines, American Airlines, and Singapore. So let me run down. So ANA, the issue with ANA for me was that we had to book round trip. So you can't book a points flight one way on ANA. And whenever I would check for availability, I couldn't find 5 seats available. Like, let me add, the website is really hard to use as a side note. But all of the flights that I found said wait list when I searched for 5 people. And basically that means there's no availability, but you can put yourself on a wait list, which will then never open up to you. So that immediately ruled that one out. The other concern I had about ANA, and this could be totally made up in my head, but when you transfer points from like American Express or wherever to a transfer partner, your name has to match exactly. And our last name has a space. It's 2 words. But when I signed up on the ANA website for the free account, they don't allow you to put a space.
That's weird.
Yeah, and so I also was a little hesitant, like, will my points transfer go through? And I don't know the answer. If any of you have a data point where you have a space in your last name, it's not a hyphen, it's just a space. Maybe send me an Instagram DM or something and let me know. So that ruled that out for me for now. That's too many points to transfer in the hopes that they might make it there. No, thank you. Virgin Atlantic was another possible option, but the flights that I was finding was like 60,000 points one way per person. And their taxes and fuel surcharges are also really high. So Virgin Atlantic, also no. Alaska Airlines is a possibility because you can book Japan Airlines through Alaska Airlines. But it's hard to get points to Alaska Airlines. It was hard to get points when I was in the research phase of this. Currently, for a short time, you can currently transfer your American Express membership rewards points to Hawaiian Airlines, and then you can transfer directly from Hawaiian to Alaska. But that's a new announcement as of the last few weeks because the 2 airlines are merging. And I'm assuming that transfer availability is only going to be possible for a short time. So depending on when you're listening to this, that may or may not still be an option. And then the last 2 were American Airlines and Singapore Airlines. And these are the 2 we ended up going with. And I'll explain why. So American Airlines, you can also book Japan Airlines through AA. And we wanted to fly Japan Airlines one way at least. We figured we're going to fly in economy and it's going to be kind of crappy, but at least we can do it on a good airline. And so Japan Airlines is a fantastic airline. So one of the things we decided was, okay, we're going to go one way on Japan Airlines and we're going to book it through American Airlines miles. And then the other way, we decided on Singapore because they're also a fantastic airline, even in economy. And they have what's called a 5th Freedom flight from Narita Airport, which is one of the 2 main Tokyo airports, to LAX. And a 5th Freedom flight, do you know what that is?
I do not.
It's when an airline flies a route that doesn't start or end in their home country, basically. So obviously Singapore Airlines is based in Singapore, but they fly a flight from the U.S. to Japan and back. The tricky part of that is once you get to LAX, you got to get yourself home because that's not our home airport. So we'll talk about that. And we'll go into at the end exactly how many points we used also for all of these. But I want to go back to American Airlines for a minute because there's a couple things that I noticed when I was doing my award searches. And like, for context, I did these award searches like every day for weeks just to try to look for patterns. And Duane was like, what the heck are you doing? Did you think I was insane?
I mean, not really, because I know you're very thorough in your searches and really everything you do.
I was just trying to understand, like, okay, if can I find a flight direct from Phoenix on Japan Airlines, number one? The answer to that was mostly no. A couple of times it did pop up, but sadly it was never on the, like, once we got to where we could actually book it on the dates we were going to travel, it wasn't available. And so then if I can't fly out of Phoenix, where is the best airport for us to position to make sure that I can get 5 seats, even if it's in economy, 5 seats, at 35,000 points a person, because that's what they cost. But when I was first looking, I thought, oh, there's a ton of flights, right, for 35,000 points in economy from Phoenix to Japan. Easy peasy. Well, then I realized, oh, but these are not all on Japan Airlines. So a lot of them are just on American Airlines, which is not as good as Japan Airlines. And so you have to specifically look in the flight information for JL. If it says AA, that's an American Airlines operated flight, and that's not going to get you on Japan Airlines. You want JL, which stands for, or JAL, but the code on the American website says JL and then whatever the flight number is. So if you want Japan Airlines booked through AA, that's what you have to look for. There were, ironically, a lot of premium economy flights available from Phoenix to Tokyo using American Airlines miles on Japan Airline metal. But we didn't have enough points for that. We barely had enough points for the 5 economy tickets, which was 175,000 points. Premium economy would have been 250, and that would have been basically opening up a whole nother American Airlines credit card, and I didn't want to do that. Oh yeah, one more tip. The other thing I noticed is that the day that American Airlines would release flights, there would not be any Japan Airlines flights on that day. But if I checked the next business day or the next day, there would be. So let me give you an example because I feel like that sounded confusing. So let's say flights opened for October 5th, 2025. That day, the day that they opened, I could find no Japan Airlines awards available. But if I waited until the next day, when 10/6/25 was going to be opening, I could see Japan Airlines availability on 10/5. So it almost seemed like the flight award availability was open, but the Japan Airlines availability was delayed one day. So just a little tip if you're trying to do this same trip.
That's just how it is. Do you know why that is?
I have no idea why. I couldn't find anything online that said that. I just happened to notice. So I was checking on, it was a Saturday, I think, that I was able to book our outbound flight. And, I don't know what day it was, but the day we were flying or trying to buy the tickets for was a Saturday. And so I was checking, and flights for Saturday were open. And flights on Friday had direct flights from, not direct, but Phoenix to LAX to Tokyo, bookable with American Airlines for 35,000 points on Japan Airlines. And so I could have booked it, but we can't leave Friday. We have to leave Saturday. And so when I checked back the next day, I was excited thinking, ooh, maybe that will be available again. Not only was it not available, but neither was the Friday flight that I found. So someone scooped that up too. If that was you, respect. Okay, so then we're going to fly there on Japan Airlines. So that's booked. We're going to fly back on Singapore Airlines using their Fifth Freedom flight into LAX. Booking on Singapore Airlines is super easy. You have to make a KrisFlyer account. That is what their membership miles or whatever is called. Obviously, make sure your names match exactly, and then you link it to your Amex account so you can transfer. It says transfers take 48 hours, but mine was instant. And I found that to be super easy experience.
So all this is American Express points, basically.
Well, American Airlines points for the flight there, and American Express points transferred to Singapore for the way back. Yes. Okay, so those are our main flights. We're actually flying. Our flight to Japan is out of San Francisco. So now we have to position twice. And I think, like, when you talk about positioning flights, it's like, it's no big deal, right? It's like not very far. For us, it's a 2-hour flight to San Francisco?
No, if that.
So you'd think, like, oh, it shouldn't be that much money, right?
I mean, you would think that.
But it is, because there's 5 of us. In my brain, a flight from Phoenix to San Francisco should cost $150 or less.
I mean, you would think.
But it doesn't.
And being that it's so far in advance, I would think it would be cheap. But I think if you book the closer to the flight, is it cheaper? Or am
I mean, it just depends. But
which I think is silly.
It totally depends. But when you're positioning for 5 people, it just becomes a much bigger thing than if it's just one person, right? Like $200 to pop over to LA or whatever for one person, no big deal. But when there's 5 of you, that's $1,000, which I don't want to pay. So, and we don't have our companion passes next year, so we can't use those to fly on Southwest. So I needed to find a solution that would work for a bigger family. I did a ton of searches. I used Google Flights to try and understand what options flew direct on what airlines. I checked Frontier. I checked Spirit. The issue with those...
Which, those are the worst.
Like, we hate Frontier with a passion. But the issue there is once you add on the bag fees, even for a carry-on size, it makes it the same as a regular flight. But then I figured it out at least one way. And we are going to use Alaska Airlines to position. My intention was to use it both ways, but as of this morning, there's been a wrench in that plan. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Alaska uses a distance-based award chart to determine the cost of award flights. And so within the U.S., flights under 700 miles start at 4,500 points, or 4,500 miles one way. So when I was looking, flights from Phoenix to San Francisco and flights from LAX to Phoenix were 4,500 points a person and $5.60 in taxes, I think. So I figured this out a few days before the announcement for the Hawaiian and Alaska Airlines merger was made. So my initial plan was to open an Alaska business card and earn the points we needed and use those points to reposition both ways. Because at 4,500 points a person, it's literally 22,500 points total one way for our whole family, plus like $28 or something. But now that I can transfer American Express to Hawaiian and then Hawaiian to Alaska, that is what I've done to book at least one-way positioning flights. So here's our overall plan for now. And this is where the wrench comes in, and we'll talk about that. We're flying Phoenix to San Francisco on Alaska using points. Already booked it. We're staying overnight in San Francisco at the Hyatt right by the airport. We'll use points for that. And the cost to reposition was 22,500 miles and $28 in taxes and fees. The next day, we fly out on Japan Airlines, booked using American Airlines miles, nonstop to Haneda. That cost us 175,000 AA miles and $28 for taxes and fees. On the way back, we fly from Narita, there's 2 main airports in Tokyo. So we fly into one and out of a different one. So on the way, we fly back from Narita nonstop to LAX on Singapore Airlines. That cost us 192,500 American Express points, which was 38,500 per person. And we paid $223.54 in taxes and fees total for all 5 of us. Then we will land in LAX and hopefully get on a plane to Phoenix within a couple of hours. However, when I signed in today to book that second positioning flight on Alaska Airlines, there is no economy availability at all, period. And there's only like 2 flights to choose from, so there's not even a lot of flights. So
we gotta fly first class? No?
I mean, I considered it, but it's literally an hour flight. Like,
Yeah.
what a waste, you know?
It's a waste.
It's 9,000 miles per person for first class, which is 40. I just think, like,
It's not worth it.
It's a waste.
Yeah.
So TBD on how we're going to get back. I think my plan is to continue checking the Alaska website. I also did look up United, and we could book on United for like 11,000 miles a person, which isn't terrible. We have some United miles from when I panic opened a United business credit card for you when I thought we were going to try to go to Yellowstone and we were going to have to fly into Montana. And then we didn't end up doing that. So I was kind of saving those points for that, but we could use them for this. But I think I also tried to look on like Southwest, but Southwest the calendar isn't open that far out. So I think the one thing that I've learned is we have a lot of time, and I'm not going to rush it, because when I rush it, something always pops up that would have been better like in a month or two, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to wait and kind of see what happens. But all in all, so far, the total out-of-pocket cost for our family of 5 to fly to Japan in economy is $307.54.
Which is fantastic.
It's fantastic. And let me add that includes what I'm assuming is going to be $28 in taxes and fees for a positioning flight back from LAX to Phoenix. Because I don't see us paying cash for those flights. We are going to use points in some way. And the taxes and fees on a points flight should be $5.60 a person. So that includes what I'm assuming is $28 for that second positioning flight. So yeah, $307
For a family of 5.
for a family of 5, and a good amount of points. I mean, whatever 175,000 plus 192,500 is. I don't know. I don't know what the math is. As for hotels on the trip, we're staying in only Hyatts. Our first positioning flight is Friday, like I mentioned. We don't fly out to Japan till Saturday, so we're going to stay at a Hyatt by the airport. Then the day we land, we check into the Grand Hyatt Tokyo for just one night.
It's because we had to book a day early, right?
Yeah, we were, yeah. When I booked the hotels first and then the flights later, because hotel availability opens first. And so I had originally booked basically hotels starting Monday. But then we were able to get a flight we needed on Saturday, which means we arrive Sunday. So we need a flight for Sunday, a hotel for Sunday. So we decided we'll do the Grand Hyatt for one night. And all the Hyatts that I'm going to mention, we have 2 rooms booked in each hotel because there's 5 of us. Then we're going to move to the Hyatt Centric Ginza for 4 nights. Again, 2 rooms booked on points. Then, these are all in Tokyo. Then we're going to take a Shinkansen. Is that how you say it?
Maybe.
A train?
Yeah, I just call it bullet train.
We're going to take the bullet train from Tokyo to Kyoto. And we're going to stay in Kyoto for 5 nights. And we're going to stay at the Hyatt Place Kyoto. And we are actually paying cash for 2 rooms there just because it was fairly inexpensive and it didn't seem the best use of points to book. And so, yes, we're using cash for that. And then we will take the train back to Tokyo, and we're going to stay at the Hyatt House Tokyo Shibuya. Shibuya. Sounds fun to say. Am I saying it right?
Shibuya, yeah.
For 4 more nights, I think, also booked using points, 2 rooms each. We may finagle a few different changes to the hotels at the end of the trip because we do want to go to Tokyo Disney, and there is a couple of hotels that are closer to Disney that it might make more sense for us to stay at. But as of now, that's what we have booked. The other thing is I am going to try to use some free night certificates, the category 1 through 4 free night certificates that I got from opening the Hyatt personal card in the last couple months. They had a new promotion, and the Hyatt House Tokyo Shibuya is a category 4. So my intention is to use some of those nights that I got and apply it towards that stay and get my points back. So.
And I just want to add, we will be globalist while we're there.
Yes.
So I'm excited for that.
Yes, we're actually, I'm waiting for the nights to post, but we're at 55 and we have 5 more to go, and we've earned them. They just haven't posted yet because it's from credit card spend. And so I'm just waiting for that to happen. And I think it might happen tomorrow, which is Monday, which is when this podcast will air. So TBD, but the reason we're prioritizing Hyatt is because of the globalist status. And we're hoping that will save us a big chunk of money because we have 30 nights booked at Hyatt's next year, which is a lot. And maybe it's even more.
I'm sure it'll be more.
So anyways, that is all the details on how we booked our trip to Japan. If you have questions, please find us on Instagram at TravelParty5. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm super excited for that trip.
I know the downside about booking so far out is it's so exciting to book it,
but so far away.
But it's so far away. It's oh my gosh, we're not going till September. So I'm super excited too. I've never been to Japan. Our kids are excited, which our kids don't get super excited about a lot of trips. They're going to go to Paris and they're not excited. So
they don't know any better.
I know. But yes, I'm super excited for Japan. We've been watching a bunch of YouTube videos about, traveling to Japan and the food. And I'm just really excited for the sushi, the noodles. It's going to be great.
Yeah. I got a buddy who's still stationed there that's going to try and get us on the base that I grew up on. I'm excited to show you and the kids where that's at.
Yeah, I think that'll be fun.
My old stomping grounds.
Yeah. And what are you most excited for about Japan besides that?
Food.
The food.
Yeah.
The 7-Eleven food.
7-Eleven food. Any of the convenience store foods. Ramen. Real ramen.
Obviously, we will do probably several podcast episodes about that trip once it happens, but I apologize that you'll have to wait approximately 10 months. As do we. So anyways, if you have questions about booking to Japan, again, find us on Instagram at TravelParty5. Give us a follow. Maybe I'll make a reel about how I booked it. If people like short form content, I don't know. But otherwise, we will catch you on the next episode. And thank you so much for listening. Leave us a review if you like our podcast. Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thank you. Have a good one.